Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a Tuesday edition of the MSP Initiative Live. It's going to be an interesting session today. Going to be joined shortly by my partner in crime, Ken Patterson, when he gets free from what he's doing, and we'll see how it goes. So, for any of you that haven't joined this show recently, we'll just do a little bit of housekeeping, and then we'll get into more of a radio style format today. We're going to give people the opportunity to chime in and see what you're feeling. But in the meantime, let me just get this out of the way. So mspinitiative.com, if you haven't checked it out, you can see this and every other session that we've ever done in podcast and video format. We haven't listed our giveaways yet, but we will be listing our vendor sponsor giveaway shortly. Stay tuned for upcoming MSP community block parties. And then what's happening right now is the Channel Strong Tour. So we're on week 2 of the Channel Strong Tour, coming next week to Western Pennsylvania and Ohio. So if you happen to be coming or in that area, go to this page, Channel Strong, put your name in as an MSP, and we'll make sure to get you there. All of the weeks for the rest of the year are posted. So if you're not in that part of the country or the world, no problem. Take a look, see where we will be, and we will, hopefully be in your backyard. You just kind of come out and visit us and grab a sandwich and a beer, and we talk shop, we learn things. So that is the housekeeping of the morning that we do before all these sessions. Keith Nelson, one of our favorite chimer-inners here. I'm new to the show. Tell me what it's about. Oh, I'm sure you'll tell us, Keith. All good. So while we're waiting for Ken to get cut loose and join us on the show, lots of things happening in IT land. And before we get too far, you'll all be muted, but you'll have the ability to unmute if you're so inclined. Best advice here, we are live, so just be mindful of that, right? And understand that we want everybody to be respectful, but also don't be afraid to give your opinion. Just make sure that you're a little bit filtering yourself, right? Public forum, and yes, just like you'd be calling into a live radio show in your car. So everybody should be, who is live on this, should be allowed to chime in, and this session will be recorded. So again, be mindful. Be mindful of that. I've already had a couple people saying, maybe I'll stay muted. Okay, I understand. Keith, I already see you're ready to go. Bruce, Brian, welcome to the show, and everybody else. There's a ton of people on here. So
I wanted to make sure we wish Ken a belated birthday.
Oh, you'll get the opportunity to do that live. He'll be on. Don't worry.
Okay.
Just running a little bit behind.
Hungover, is that the problem?
Oh no, it's too early for that. That's a weekend problem. So let's go through a couple things, guys, right? So you probably didn't realize it, but Barracuda looks like they're being acquired. I know that's not the one we're all ready to talk about, but a lot of people are shifting hands, right? So Tomo Bravo looks like they're going to sell Barracuda and Scout, another kind of MSP-ish focused vendor. And then you still got my little tabs ready to go here, right? And then obviously we have, we have the big one, right? We have the Kaseya Datto one, which we're going to talk about. There's a lot of commentary out there. You see, our friend from Joe P from Channel EDE has plenty of stuff out there as well. Obviously, there's some innuendo on how does that reset, the top of our sandbox, I like to call it, the MSP sandbox. But a lot of things happened this week, right? A lot of money shifting hands. And keep in mind, these deals aren't 100% done, especially in the realm of, the Kaseya Datto conversation. It still has to be completed, right? They announced that it's going to happen. Likely will. I probably don't think they go out and put that out there if they don't think it's going to go through. But obviously that means that this probably gets done, I'd say on the back end of the year, right? Maybe Q3, Q4. And hey, there's a DattoCon there announced in September, right? So that'll be kind of the maybe launching off point of the new combined company. But yeah, you're definitely talking about something that's going to happen. I know a lot of people are saying, "Hey, what can we do to stop this?" I've seen some of the threads out there. I don't think that's in the cards, guys. I think it's happening, right? So the question is, I want to kind of open it up, right? And again, be respectful, but I want to hear what everybody's opinions are about it, and then we can talk about where things go from here, right? Again, Joe P's like, "Hey, what are your alternatives?" Right? And you see lists, the big companies at the top of the food chain. The good news, just big picture from my perspective is, there's a lot of companies, coming up, right? I mean, there's a lot of, SaaS companies that either spawn from MSPs or, now that there's a lot of focus on our sub industry, our sandbox, there's a lot of companies that are starting up, right? And kind of modernizing the way that things have been happening for what feels like 25 years. I mean, think about the original Kaseya company, right? I mean, they launched their original flagship product, which is now known as VSA, back in late, like 2000, right? Like late 99, 98, 99, 2000, right? And that was that first 10-year run where like all of the companies that are now at the top of the food chain today started their journey. And everybody took a different route, right? So there's no question that private equity and venture capital dollars have come into our world. Some people think that's good, some people think that's bad, but we're now not a hidden sub industry, right? People know about us. Once you start putting companies on the stock exchange, it's pretty clear. Now, we can talk a little bit about how that went, right? I mean, and what that means for the strategy moving forward for these vendors, and what that means for us, the MSPs out there, using these vendors. So, Keith, not gonna hold you up. I know you have plenty to think about. Give me your initial thoughts. Kaseya data.
First of all, I a lot of thoughts. I'd written a internal memo. We were going through our stack and how to fine tune Autotask and data RMM and spend some time on it. I think we're reconsidering that. I do recall being one of the elder gentlemen of the channel. We were talking about this years ago. We used to invent our own PSAs with Remedy and all in house, and we went away from that because it's really not cost effective. Someone I saw had posted, and I thought it was Darren, but maybe someone else, that they want to put in all their contracts. If it's sold, if the company sold, the contract's null and void. Added as a rider. I think that's appropriate. I mean, I don't know what we can do about it as an industry, but you buy into a complete cycle of tool set, support, contact people. I mean, it's not just the product. It's a wrap of things. And if a company wants to put us on a long-term contract, maybe that should be a bilateral contract where we're both putting skin in the game. And if we're buying in, I bought into data, I'll say it, because of Rob Wright, was one of the big reasons. And years ago in business school, they taught us that mergers, acquisitions, and often they lose the people they want to keep, because those are the best employees, and those are the ones that will get solicited, pulled away. There's always some doubt that you're looking at the guy next to you. You both had the same title, and you go, who stays? The stronger people will get gobbled up. So there's, I don't know. It makes it uneasy, and it's not what I bought into, and I'm not sure that I want to continue that relationship.
Okay, that's interesting. So Joe pops in the chat here and says, we specifically chose Datto and Autotask because it wasn't Kaseya. And then he replied, his response to you, Ken, was, or Keith, was, obviously that's an oversimplification, but still true. Now, okay, so how much, I mean, as a smaller entity, you really don't have a ton of options when it comes to the master services agreement, terms of service, whatever you want to call it, partner agreement, when you go to adopt a solution upstream, right? the larger MSPs out there definitely have more sway, right? Good, bad, or indifferent, the more dollars you have to throw around, the more you can flex. But generally speaking, from a vendor standpoint, like, hey, here it is. If you don't want it, don't sign, right? They tend not to send things back to the legal department to adjust changes to the regular services agreement, right? So to your point, Keith, I mean, maybe your opinion is totally valid, right? Hey, I want to know who I'm doing business with, and for some reason my ownership changes, or for some reason your ownership changes. Either party should be able to opt out, but that's not usually how those types of agreements are written. And can you even get them modified as a smaller guy in the pond, right? Do you see what I'm saying, Keith?
No, you have an excellent point and question. I mean, it was like, I'd read it, I looked at it, I go, I love the idea, but I questioned it. I sent it to our administration department, said, hey, we should think about if this is possible, and waiting for an attorney to respond. I guess it's possible to ask.
I mean, if you don't ask, you can't. If you don't ask, you can't get. That's clear as day. The question is, does it work, and how it may severely delay the ability for you to get it done, right? It may severely prevent, like it may take months in order for that to matriculate through, rather than you sign up today, you're online in a week or two, right? If there's, depending on what you're buying, could be today, right?
And just for me, generally speaking, waiting months is probably okay.
Okay.
I mean, it's like normally you're making a change. I mean, for a startup guy, I get it. For a guy just starting up his company and going like, I need all these tools right away. But for those of us that have tools and just say, you're just delaying when I could change over and start giving you my money. That's kind of right. That's kind of why I look at it. There is a representation. It's funny, in my view, someone said that it was I thought they marketed themselves as the non-Kaseya company in a lot of ways.
I'm not sure they came out and said that exactly.
No, not exactly, but I think there was underlying. They're classy people. I'll say that all. Everyone at Datto I dealt with, professional, classy, industry pro. But I thought it was the underlying message, as many companies did. We're not that guy.
So let's ask this question. Let's say, and I think we all know that the chatter is, we know what comes next, right? The terms change, the time changes, the ability to, like the way that they do business was going to change, and how does that affect you as the MSP? Let's say they came back and said, hey, whatever you had before is going to stay the same way now. Does that change your mind?
Depends on who. I'm not a Kaseya customer. I only use one part of their product, and I have noticed a lack of service. It has to do with who am I dealing with, who's the service, what's your commitment to continue to improve the product. There's a lot of questions.
But I'm sure one of those questions is, if I don't want to stay, can I go?
I'm not. Yeah, at least in Cal. I hear that. Some of it I feel uneasy repeating because it hasn't happened to me. People say stuff like they sneak, all of a sudden you're at 3 years. And I'm going like, I don't know how that happens all of a sudden. I really don't. I mean, in California, at least, they're pretty, there's some pretty good consumer-based protections on changing those contracts. You have to put it in a bigger font. I don't think they'd sneak that by. So when people say that, I go, I don't know. It's kind of the same thing I always hear about Dell. And I go, I've been a Dell partner since 1998, and they've never biked a deal. So I don't know if that's a rumor or every
time I turn around, I see an article saying Dell's, channel conflict. And I'm like, when wasn't it a channel conflict? It's always been that way, in my opinion. Like at the end of the day, I think that the larger conversation outside of what we're talking about now is, hey, is it a company designed to work with the IT and MSP sandbox, and is their program set up accordingly, or is it a direct player who has a bolt-on channel program that's kind of off to the side. I mean, Ken's not here yet, but you don't have to go too far to say NCE and the new Microsoft Partner Score. I mean, those two things rubber banded together are going to be difficult for the smaller guy to still play.
Exactly. I mean, I agree with it.
And they're the big, I mean, the only difference here is Microsoft's Microsoft, right? And everybody else we're talking about is just not as big.
Yeah, I'm a different, I don't see Microsoft being a big part of, I don't see reselling Microsoft being a big part of our success. It's just there. I mean, I could care less, there's not that much, it's not a big ticket item at full price. So I'm going like, I don't care. I just as soon tell people, this is what Microsoft's doing to you. We'll help manage your account because we make enough money off that. And you just pay them to, it's like, but your base tool set is part of my core business. That is something I have to worry about every day. If Microsoft goes offline, Microsoft offers bad service, it's pretty well known. So that's not a reflection on me as much.
I mean, Microsoft's not immune to being down, right? AWS had a bunch of issues. Microsoft has issues. Facebook has issues. Everybody's going to be affected at some point. I think that's the reality. I guess the concern there is how often, right? And when you talk about multiple days of continuing issues, I think there's a little bit of more of like a confidence level there, right? I mean, and to your point, Keith, if I can just point to a public news headline, then it kind of takes the onus off of you. But we've talked a lot of times on this particular program that why is the MSP absorbing the vendor's liability? I mean, you're not manufacturing the software. It's not, like it's your job to ask the right questions and deploy it and support it, but you're not the guy who's pressing all the buttons upstream, right?
I agree with what you say, like 90%, except for our base tool set. I don't know if we escape that when we sit down and say, what are you going to use for accounting software? And the discussion goes back and forth and they choose QuickBooks and then QuickBooks does something stupid. I think I have a little bit of Teflon on me at that point.
Well, there's always you recommended it, so it always comes back to you, right? I mean, that's just the way that business works, right?
Yeah.
But I think there is a line in the sand though, right? Hey, I didn't want that to go bad for you, but like I didn't recommend something knowing that it was a problem, right? I recommended something because I had a positive experience in the past, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
I just think that when it comes to, I don't know if the customer didn't help us choose our tool set. So that's where I draw the line. This, this is like, I wouldn't let my mechanic tell me your car fell off the lift because I bought a crappy piece of, I'm going like that. That's not my problem.
Okay, so, but hold on. And maybe we're going a little bit off topic, but it's still worth mentioning. Does your customer even know that Datto is behind, in the mix of your tool set? Like it's not a household name. How, some things are easier to rip and replace than others, right? Like if you wanted to go replace your MDR, EDR, antivirus, malware, pick whatever flavoring of that it is, you could just deploy that overnight. The next day they're on the new one, right? Like you have the capability to do that.
They know we use a service, just like, and they know the name of it, not that it resonates. They may know now because it just got $6.5 billion.
Yeah, but if they, like, at the end of the day, they just need to know, do I have backup? Am I protected? Do they really care what the product is behind the scenes?
With our smaller customers, no. With the ports and the aerospace and the government stuff, yes, because they vet our vendors. It was just like I was on a call the other day and they were talking about pen testing, which we won't get into all the anomalies about that term, but we have to let aerospace and Homeland Security regulator who's going to be our outside test and what tool sets we're using, where that data goes to. So, and it's the same thing with when we put in some data backup. You know, we have to say, this is not our data storage. This is who it is. Here's all the information. So
That's fair. Gavin chimes in and says clients with compliance requirements need to know. Fair, Gavin. I mean, like, are you every vertical has their wrinkles, right? Their compliances, their requirements. Not everybody's dealing in every, you know, nook and cranny of those things, right?
yeah,
But fair enough. And like a certain amount of transparency is not a bad thing, right? If anything, we've talked 1,000 times about, we've had Brad Gross on, our legal guru, and he says, yeah, you shouldn't white label anything. I mean, if you didn't manufacture it, it's not you, and you're just helping to bring that feature set to your customer. That those terms of service should apply to your downstream customer. They should understand who's behind the scenes so that when the inevitable problem occurs somewhere down the line, you're not the one that's ultimately the guy holding the bag, right?
right. I don't know how much that matters. I've heard there's some logic to it, but depends on what it is. If it's something me and a client jointly use, or we support that's their line of business, yes. On the other stuff, I get where he says we should say that, but you're going like, I would, you know, my backup choice goes down. Yeah, I think that's on me.
Sorry, I'm just making sure everybody that came on new is allowed to talk. So you can unmute yourself, guys. You can join the conversation. We're not monopolizing time. I mean, you know, Keith's just very vocal, so we would love to hear people's opinions. I mean, feel free to unmute yourself and chime in. Gavin, go ahead. You can unmute. You got something, you know, you got a couple of points here. I'd love to hear what you have to say about the conversation.
I'm driving right now, but basically, we agree with moving away from whitelisting, and now between compliance requirements and between the major breaches that have happened in the past year or less, clients have looked at what are we running, what are the tools on their computers. Like we've gotten emails, hey, we just saw this thing on CNET, or we just saw this thing on CNN. Is this a problem? Are we affected by this?
Okay, so last year we had, I mean, it wasn't, you know, so the SolarWinds issues, although SolarWinds and Enable are now separate entities, right? And then, you know, so the SolarWinds kind of enterprise product, different from the SolarWinds MSP products, had an issue. And then obviously Kaseya's original flagship product, VSA, had their issue. That definitely made the headlines, right? That was you know, you could go to a major news outlet and read about it. And obviously that continued, that news. I think they caught one of the guys that actually did, you know, the actual, you know, hack, right? And deployed it. I think they, you know, extradited him into the United States, if I read properly, and they're prosecuting him. But so you're saying that because that's now mainstream, and I would assume in combination with insurance companies, right, who are providing cyber liability insurance policies as part of business insurance, are now asking, some of them ask, are you list the name of the products that you use. And we know that there was a wrinkle somewhere last year where one of the major insurance companies went to all of their agents and said, you can't use these products. I think they've since reversed that. But you're saying that people are now, you know, absolutely, some of them are saying, what are you using? I want to know. And they're going to do their own research. Okay.
Oh yeah, and even in their research, you have to remember we're talking about end users here, so their research is looking at it and kind of getting their best understanding of it. So we even have things coming to us, especially since Kaseya decided to point fingers and try to show that other companies like ConnectWise have been breached. We got people sending us articles from 2 years before saying, hey, you know, we know that we have this on our system. Should we be afraid? Should we be concerned about this?
Welcome to the show, Ken. Looks like you're busy today, buddy.
Trying to make it the best I can. I'm in my car, so that'll just give you a little. I wasn't supposed to be tied up the way I was tied up, but I got stuck on a call for about 45 minutes, so I'm in my car.
Hopefully not driving and zooming, but happy birthday, by the way.
I parked.
Where's he headed to? He's looking like he's dressed sharp there, huh?
Not his normal attire. Agreed. So Ken, we're obviously talking about, the big Kaseya Datto conversation, and Keats give us a little bit of opinion. You heard, Gavin chime in for a little bit here. We're just kind of open forum, right? We want to hear what people have to say about it. I mean, ultimately, the deal's not done. It probably gets done, I would say, later on in the year. I'm guessing Q4. Datto's in September. Maybe that's the jumping off point, like in Q3. But it takes time, right? They are publicly listed. They got to go through the process. It's not an overnight thing, but it's going to happen. And I threw a couple of hypotheticals out there, like, well, what if nothing changes? What if they say whatever your current terms are, they continue? I think that would be the best case scenario. I think most of the people would probably say that's not going to happen based on the past, right? So now we talk about it, right? Where do we go from here? What does that do? And how do people adjust? I made the comment saying your end customer just needs to know that they're protected, right? That they're covered. And if the majority of people are using a backup solution from Datto, or I know some people still use Datto networking. I don't know if they've been able to buy new stuff, but existing stuff's still out there. Like there's the SaaS protection, right, for Office 365 and all of that jazz. And then obviously some of their newer stuff, I don't know how far people got onto those products, right? Whether it's the Azure backup, whether it's the BitDam, which I believe is like an email spam filtering style solution. And then InfoSight, which was like that, SOC, SIEM, EDR type of play. I mean, it's so new. I'm not sure how far that got, right? So at the end of the day, I guess it all depends on how far people are into, the separate products as part of their stack.
I think the majority of people that are losing their minds, I think it's safe to use that term, that are losing their minds right now are the Datto devices, right? The BDRs. And, I feel for them, right? Because I think everybody knows my whole take on things that happen in the channel are usually a little more rosy. I try to be a little more positive and try to say, hey, listen, someone gets hacked. We're all going to get hacked. Let's not kick them when they're down. And in this case, to George's point, yeah, you'd really want to see the devices and the service stay the same, because what's going to happen, right? The devices are working for the most part. It seems like everybody I'm talking to says that's the problem. They work, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But I have this issue with Kaseya, and we've seen that track record. So yeah, if they're not going to do what's happened over the last couple of, times where like Rocket Cyber and some of these ones where people are, coming back at us and saying, hey, look, they wanted to jam us right into a 3-year contract. They wanted to raise the prices right out of the gate. I don't know if they can do something like that on this scale with Datto, and maybe that'll keep them from bumping that up. But I think overall, I do believe the outrage is legit. I think that people should be concerned, and they're allowed to raise concerns. I've seen people try to completely sugarcoat this and say this is great for everyone, and that's not true either. Because we all know if you have thousands of endpoints or hundreds of endpoints, having to replace those if they do change to that point would definitely not feel good to anybody, big, small, it doesn't matter. It doesn't feel good to have to do something like that. And we're already seeing some of the, what's the word I'll use? Aggressive vendors come out and with some pretty crazy websites pushing to basically say the death to Datto and all this other stuff. And it's like, wow, that's really fast. But I would say don't be careful where you're going with this if you're going to make the move. My thing would be talk to the executives that are at Datto, the ones that that are still there, and see if they have any idea if they'll still be there, and start to follow that path.
Ken, you bring up, well, first of all, Kaseya doesn't buy Datto to keep the full staff on both sides.
True,
right?
True.
I mean,
that's why check that.
We get the math there. So then you look at the executives, and the ones that are in the know are probably not allowed to discuss too much, and the rest of them are probably not in the know. I mean, someone probably said, hey, Ken, you're one of our valuable guys, we're keeping you. And then walks over to George's office and says, George, you're a lot better than that Ken dude. We're keeping you. And then they keep them both at bay. So, you know, I don't know. It'd be hard, not impossible. It'd be difficult to believe that the culture of Datto would overtake Kaseya, because they were the buyee, not the buyer. So while I try to be a little more positive on most things, I try to be a realist too, and I say, I tend to think it's going to go the other way.
I
Okay.
totally can see that. I mean, when you look at the culture that we have been exposed to from Kaseya for the last 5 years, they've been nothing but a gobble machine that software goes to die. They ride that horse forever until they're forced to make a change. And we in the MSP world have done nothing but bitch and complain about it this whole time. And people need to start voting with their feet. You know, how many people are on this call that are bitching and complaining are still neck deep into IT glue? I don't know. When's IT glue put anything out that was a good thing? I mean, you know, I got into an argument with a lady on one of their webinars and she says, oh, we're doing coding all the time. I went and I said, where? I see ideas out here that are 5 years old that are still not implemented. And, you know, we are in our shop we've made the decision to move away from Kaseya completely. And to kill off Kaseya is getting to be a harder thing to do. And we're going to pick the ones that we need. You know, there's rumors that there's a very large marketing firm that's been purchased by Kaseya. Everybody knows that name. I don't know if it's true or not. But the fact of the matter is, will we keep that marketing firm after Kaseya becomes the official owner? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But the decision into voting with our feet, the only reason Kaseya keeps getting bigger is because people keep paying them money. And when it comes down to, if people start leaving in mass and moving over to IT Portal as opposed to IT Glue or Hoodoo or whatever, that stuff needs to start happening, or they'll buy the next thing out there. I wish they had the integrity that a lot of other IT vendors, IT product people out there have, because I haven't seen it. And everything I read on it and reading post after post after post, I have yet to see, oh my God, I was so waiting for this, that we're going to have this amazing product, and everyone is the opposite side of that.
I just got one of the, and I don't want to name, one of the other PSAs sent out a 1 year free if you move from Datto.
Yeah, that's the aggressive one we were talking about. They also had some kind of like the, you know, goodbye Datto tagline or something. It's like, geez, it's day one.
And another blog was how to move from Datto.
Yep.
And it was like, here's a power script to move IT Glue to Hoodoo. And here's how to load your new I mean, it was like someone had really thought it. Someone obviously was doing it, knew about it. But some of the points they brought up, you're going like, is this the reason you have been able to get Datto hardware for a while? Is this the reason the last purchase really wasn't implemented? That SimSock, you couldn't really get data on it, and things had slowed down.
Yeah.
And so then I think it's hard to rebuild your trust, hard to put a genie back in a bottle. And I think people are feeling like this was going on behind our back, legitimately, because there's laws. I mean, but I think there's a feeling of betrayal.
I mean, the problem is, okay, you have a choice, right? Either you can stay or you can go, right? And at the end of the day, to Matt, your point, you just don't know when another transaction happens down the line, right? I mean, I think at this point it's safe to say this is not gonna, whether it's Kaseya or anybody else, right? Big guys are gonna come down and continue to gobble up small guys. That's not just this industry, it's everywhere. We definitely are seeing a trend, but like you don't know tomorrow, the next guy may say, yep, we're acquiring, right? And so Keith made an earlier point. Can you protect yourself in some way when you go to talk to vendors saying, hey, if you get acquired, I want to be able to go out, right? I want out, right? And then, I guess the point is a lot of the terms, if you're working with an MSP focused company, a lot of people are like, hey, I don't want minimums. I don't want contracts. I don't want terms, this, that, and the other. And then usually how this all bubbles up to the top is, hey, if you want a better price, you need to put some skin in the game. And that's where, something that's not, you can leave tomorrow without a penalty comes in my opinion.
Well,
I think
it's
this,
funny that you
oh.
mentioned that though, George, because to Keith's point, that you just mentioned, and we already saw this, and I'm not 100% sure of this, but check into it. We saw yesterday that somebody had posted that Datto actually has in their contract some kind of verbiage that if some kind of change were to happen at the higher levels, something like a sale where it went to somebody else, that there is some kind of out in that contract. But if it's not now, to George's point, it's something that every MSP should be looking at going forward. It's one of the few things you can do to just say, hey, I just want an out clause. You get bought out by somebody different and they make changes immediately. We need to have an out clause.
Not to put you on the spot, Ken, but I think that comes into some place where it may be an advantage to buy our products through a company like Pax8. No, I'm serious. I had really thought about that because you're going like individually, I couldn't negotiate that. But if you guys became a big reseller for a PSA, then maybe that could occur.
Wait until Pax8 gets acquired. Yeah, we're going to be in the same. They're going to be in the same situation.
Ultimately,
I think this is very reminiscent in the back of the days when HP and Compaq merged, and there was the two tech giants of who was gobbling who, and the high-powered channel guys at the top, and there was a lot of agreements in place that HP just severed. So partners that had regions and doing certain things in region, whether it was sled work or just regular private, got cut and somebody else got replaced because it was HP's company versus Compaq's company.
The difference here is they're feeling it much worse because it's on a monthly, and those changes monthly hurt them right out of the gate.
The model, the model has changed, but it's very reminiscent, and a lot of us, Keith, you were back in that era too, and I don't know about you guys, but we had to kind of take a wait and see as to what was going to go on. And it was, it really turned into a power struggle inside of Compaq leadership, how they survived in HP with,
I just miss tell.
And
Well,
Kevin Gilroy moved through, even though he withstood Dan Vertrees, who was making that push and creating channel conflict. And so it's very reminiscent.
That brings up what I brought up earlier in the call before Ken was on, that what happens is a lot of times these mergers cause the best to leave because they're the most marketable. I was involved I was inside of the Compaq a little bit because I was a consultant for Ray Lane at the time. And I remember that our thought was that the best people were the Compaq people, the best engineers, the better server people, so on and so forth. What we ended up with was the HP people. And so
it costs less money.
Yeah.
Well, what I think ended up was part of what they bought they didn't get, which was Compaq engineering. Remember, Compaq servers were good servers back then.
Oh, they're amazing. Yeah.
And they weren't after that because I think they lost the best engineers because the best engineers were marketable.
I think some of the challenge here is that, nobody's coming to pay for your labor to go replace your product, right? I mean, and like I said earlier, some products are easy to replace. Like you could do it overnight and just blast it out to all your customers and you're done. Some other changes require off hours changes, sometimes truck rolls, right? You can't maybe reformat a BDR like that remotely as much as you want.
Right.
There is an actual cost. There's a labor cost every
Yep.
time you make a change like this.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I was just going to say real quickly to the two PAX-8 questions. One, to Keith, to your point, that will be something that I will talk to the team about and just say, the vendor team, the vendor success team about the fact that, hey, because honestly, we got hurt by some of these too, right? We have some of these vendors on our line card that get purchased by another companies a la Rocket Cyber. And we had specific terms locked in. But it didn't matter because the outside thing was the changes were made, the prices were raised, and people panicked and they jumped ship, and all these things happened. On the second part of that question about if PAX-8 gets acquired, I can tell you from experience, PAX-8 would never get acquired in a way that something like this would happen. Just because, and I'm not blowing smoke, I don't do that. Our upper management, all the way up to our CEO, he's a guy that will be right behind all of you right now, saying that this is horrible and backing everybody up on how it has to work and all of that. So I wouldn't see a sale of PAX-8 going to someone like a company that would step in and completely ruin everything we've done. And also, I don't see us selling before we get to that point either. Our CEO has a vision and he's not there yet. So I'll tell you, that's the reason why I left the MSP world, to come help all the MSPs, because I believed in what these guys are doing. So and I'm still believing that. So stay tuned. There's a lot more cool things that are going to happen.
Yeah, but everybody is susceptible to human conditions. Just look at how many band members have been killed in plane crashes. All it takes is all your guys flying off to some big resort somewhere, some catastrophic, unforgivable accident happening. I mean, you never know what the world is going to do. Ken, you saying that gives me a lot of confidence to continue giving my business to PAX-8, because I like knowing that the little guys who are out there talking to people like me have got that much confidence in their ownership. But quite frankly, as somebody who does it, I'm scared to death of everybody. I think that the change can happen anyway, anywhere. It's funny things happen in this big old bad world.
$6 billion talks big changes to anybody. I don't care who's on this call. Some guy comes up and offers you $6 billion. Are you going to care what we think? You're going to cry all the way to the bank. I agree. Sold.
By the way, I think that not to. The point is the difference between the
Phillips
debt.
Earlier.
I don't know what the profit is on that. 6 billion is a huge number, right? But you have to look at the strike price versus what they're getting, and you're going, what was their profit spread?
Yeah,
but I don't know that.
Walter Brown says sold, and Joe Phillips had something earlier in the chat. He said Musk didn't buy into Twitter to leave it alone.
Well, that's why he also stepped down from the board.
He never accepted the board seat.
And maybe he never accepted the conditions.
Yeah, that was it. According to what we read, accepting the board seat would mean he would be limited to how much stock he could buy. And Walter just said it. He wants to buy more stock.
Yeah.
You say hostile takeover? Possibly, Joe. Possibly. And Seth pops in. He's like, not really lifetime cycles, but definitely more than 13 to 36 months for sure. Seth, are you talking about being able to replace gear? I think that's what you're talking about.
Customers' expectation of when things should be replaced, even if they're not realistic expectations. 13 months is ridiculous to me. I'm sorry.
What, to do a wholesale change?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Like 48 is reasonable to me. 36 isn't either.
But isn't the concern, Seth, and I'm just throwing this out there, so like your customer's still earlier in the game, but if your terms change and you get locked into a longer term by staying, isn't that the fear? Isn't that everybody's big concern with, hey, it's not month to month anymore. It's not 1 year renewals. It could turn into a 3-year renewal. and then that's kind of where the lopsidedness comes from, the way that you do business versus the way that you're working with on the other side. I mean, that's always the bad sandwich in this, just generally speaking, right? If your customer leaves and you're still stuck under some sort of term, unless you have your terms align, right, to your end customer, you get stuck in an offset. Isn't that the issue?
Depends on what it is. I mean, they do align unless it's you're leasing the hardware out.
Sure. A lot of people like to get their hardware up front, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if you can do hardware as a service, obviously, unless you're using some sort of back-end financing vehicle through a third party, if you're fronting your own money, your own cash flow, then you're waiting for the beginning part of the term to get your hard dollars back before you kind of residual out, right?
Yeah, and this is just us. I mean, our deposits and upfront installation fee usually equals the cost of the hardware. So the lease payment's gravy, and we're whole even if they walk, even though our contract says they either have to pay a buyout or return it.
I mean, didn't, again, not to be the bad guy. I know Ken's gonna like throw something through the screen at me, but like NCE brought a lot of this term and co-terming conversation up, right? Hey, if you have your customer under a 3-year or 2-year, 5-year, however you work out your managed services agreements, but then the start and the end date of the vendor's term is not in alignment, then there was this whole conversation about breaking those things apart so that you're not stuck on the differential if your services agreement doesn't align with the vendor services agreement, right?
I just think that's I just think that's a harder, with Office 365, it's not it's not like a piece of hardware that's sitting there. I think there's a little difference because I don't think there's a huge spread there. And sorry, Ken, I hope this isn't against PAX 8 when I say this. I don't think that's a huge, for Microsoft and with a spread in Office 365, I do more as a convenience to offer a full menu than a profit center. So if that walks away, I go, my desire to take a risk on that is less. Whereas on a BDR or other services, they're less retailish. I just made that word up. And so there's more profit in them. That's just my opinion.
So there's this in the chat, another leg of this is coming out, which is worth talking about. There's the downstream service that you sell to your customer, but there's now this back end platform that you use to run your business, right? The PSA, the RMM, right? Your customer doesn't care about those things, but you do, right? Because you run ticketing and projects and invoicing through those things. That's not so easy to do a rip and replace, right?
No.
That takes a lot more pain to go through a change.
Honestly, if somebody would get the guts to release, a tool to make that migration, I believe it's already out there, but everybody's afraid of these big guys because they don't want to say, hey, there's an easy way to migrate your data from this PSA to that PSA.
We did it from one to another. It wasn't that hard, but we have developed. I mean, it took to import 10, 15 years worth, took about 4 hours.
Wow.
Sounds fun, but I don't think it's that easy for everyone.
I wish I could say us migrating from Autotask to Autotask, which would make, everybody else here think, oh, that should be super simple. Would have taken only 4 hours.
Yep.
I guess the thing I'm kind of a silver lining guy, even sometimes my mouth doesn't come out that way. The silver lining that's in this is that if people were not considering moving away from PSA and RMM because of the amount of pain and suffering it was going to be, when they realize there's other options out there, this may push them to actually look.
True.
We are now internally, we were looking at moving away from Datto a year ago. And the reason, because we got tired of dealing with these picadillo issues that we couldn't find an answer to. Support couldn't help us, and to the point that, we raised a big stink about it. Someone actually was able to help us a little bit. And then the Kaseya breach happened. And then I didn't move because, Datto has a CISO that's been on staff for, 6 years. Kaseya hired theirs right after the breach. Like, yeah, that's forethought thinking for you. And now when we're looking at this from a point of view, if we're going to eliminate Kaseya and Datto is now on that list, then we look at it from a completely different view of, okay, what do we need? What makes sense? How does it make our business better? As opposed to going, you know what, I need a PSA and throw a dart, I picked an Autotask. You're the mature MSPs that are out there are going to do the homework and the legwork to find what really fits the bill for them. And the ones that are not are either going to stay or it does fit their bill. I'm not throwing everyone under the bus and saying they don't have a clue if they're stinking with Datto, but Kaseya and BEMS or whatever the hell it's called, but there's a time we're going to have to ask the question, is Kaseya, BMS, and Datto, those are competing products owned by the same company. Are we going to see a merge? I mean, apparently that's happened, and I'm not a ConnectWise user. Apparently that happened with ConnectWise and, with their lab tech and, the other products that they merged stuff together, and it hasn't gone very well. Now, that's all rumor mill to me because I don't have firsthand knowledge of that. But, it's culture. What is your culture? If your culture is hanging out with a business that doesn't see as security as top notch, that should be something we should focus on. And if your culture wraps around that, you're loose and goose and sling it as it goes, knock yourself out because Kaseya is your company. If your culture is wrapped around security and making sure that everyone's above board and that you're being as transparent as be, I don't believe that Kaseya is your company.
Someone I was that I respect immensely was on a call with CompTIA yesterday, and he basically went on about how he has a great relationship with Kaseya and he's a bigger MSP, and how he has traded in licenses. He basically said, I'm giving up, and I forgot all the Kaseya product. Oh, he was leaving IT Glue, and they let him out of his contract because he was going to buy more of their their PSA licenses. He really spoke high. So I go like, there are someone that likes him. I met him yesterday. But as far as how my concern is the look and feel and what the product's going to end with, and how long it's going to take the Kaseya PSA people and the Datto to get to know each other and even do updates. I mean, there's that unknown that someone in marketing is going to have to address.
There's some logic to, hey, Toyota has Toyota, and then there's Lexus, Honda, and Acura, Volkswagen, and Porsche.
Yeah, but it's different. It's different, as you know, here. I mean, they're not going to let them run on their own. That's the problem. Now, if they do, great, that helps. But that's the problem. That's why everybody's losing their mind. Is the track record has been they're not doing that.
By the way, the first one you brought up, Lexus and Toyota. Lexus is where the top Toyota engineers go. There's synergy there. That's a company they created. Now,
yeah, but it's
a little different.
It's under the same corporate umbrella. They're serving different markets, right?
Well, no, I get, but that's something I would look more at the Porsche Volkswagen one. Those were two separate companies that had to merge. I think there's a difference between a luxury brand you create versus another competitor that's purportedly in the same level that you acquire.
So we're going to have the luxury RMM and the consumer, the basic RMM.
I mean, there's Pulse. Hold on, there's Pulseway that I believe Kaseya owns or majoritively owns. There's the original VSA, right? That's now 2. now Datto RMM, 3, right? There's 3 companies right there that effectively offer overlap of services. I mean, do they merge all of those together? Do they just pick one, or maybe they just let all 3 serve different people? It's kind of what Enable's been doing, right? They have different levels of products, and one's like a light version and one's a heavier version, right?
I was gonna think of the old GM model. I start you in a Chevy, and then I get you up to a Buick, Oldsmobile, however it went, until I get you into the Cadillac. And there was that, that's a theory.
I mean, so they, the question that, Ken's probably saying, hey, it costs money to keep these things going. Matt's saying it costs money to keep these things secured and patched. So at some point, is there diminishing return? Maybe. I just don't know if that's an immediate decision they have to make. I think they probably have a long while before they even have to think about it.
I think the problem is, to Matt's point, is the diminishing return is much faster when you're talking about our industry than you are about the auto industry. From security standpoint alone, it changes so fast, and if nobody's watching it, it goes right down that road that Matt was leading us down.
What the other thing that would concern me, George, to your point, is if it takes a while to figure this all out and see what comes out the other end, we're going to make some sausage. I'm surely not willing to sign a 3-year minimum seat deal until I know what I'm buying. And that is my biggest concern, is the unknown. It's like, am I going to end up with VSA, whatever you called it, or am I going to end up with Autotask, or am I going to end up with
I think all of them have the same problem. Alberto came in here and said Acronis is moving really fast. Acronis is white labeling a lot of pieces and jamming them together on top of their actual IP. You mentioned Matt, you mentioned ConnectWise trying to merge a bunch of products together into something new. It's not done yet, that's for sure. And now we're talking about, I think Kaseya now has what, 30 plus brands underneath of their umbrella, right? I mean, they, through all of their acquisitions. So I don't know. That's the big question. You don't know. And so the question is, do you go to something you do know, or do you wait and see? And Keith, your point is, if I wait and see and I get stuck, that's not good either.
If my contract remains the same, and you go work with me or go month to month until I see the end product, I may ride it out. But if they come up to me and say, just like they just did from IT Glue, we're going to do some changes where you guys go to a 3-year contract, I said no, because I bought it before when you guys had promised monthly releases that don't occur anymore, and you still haven't sorted out the merger mess. And no, I have other options. Now, if they say stick with us month to month, we'll deliver something good, I may go, well, it's not worth moving. It's more of a headache, and I don't like to work that hard. Like, I'm like Ken. I like to take life easy.
Ultimately, we're going to have to, as mature MSPs, we're going to have to pick what makes sense for our business.
Yep.
So we can't emotionally decide, no matter how upset, angry, fire spitting we want to be on this. Moving 100 endpoints or 100,000 endpoints takes time and effort, like George said, that we're going to have to eat on one way or another. Now, there's probably some really good ways of doing it and figuring it out. But again, the good thing about this is it's going to open up a lot of people to look at the alternatives out there. You look at these, the small ones that have come up recently. Synchro's one off the top of my head. There's a few others. They may not necessarily quote unquote be there on, some of the stuff, but you know what? I was looking at Ninja yesterday because, I immediately wanted to look to see what else is out there. And you go on their website and they have their whole plan of what they're planning to do with the product on their website, where they are in their development process, what's planned, what's scheduled, what's being considered. Gosh, you can do, I don't think that's on Datto's. I don't think that's on, IT Glue, and the stuff that is IT Glue is, 5 years old and still hasn't been addressed. The point is that I think there's something better out there. Datto and Autotask even though they've been doing a ton of coding on it, which I've been very impressed with, there's some stuff in it that really just drives us buggy. And why is it done this way? It makes no sense. And the purchasing and the gobbling up of Kaseya is going to allow people to, doesn't matter how big the product is, there's always something else out there, and I think this is a good thing for those people, because they're going to have a lot of people that are going to go, I don't want to be a part of the empire, and I want to go with the new kids on the block and put my money there, because realistically, I didn't use 80% of what Datto or Autotask provided me.
That was exactly what I was going to, it's like something George can relate with. People buying phones. They'll go, yeah, how many speed dial numbers can it handle? And I go, I've been managing your phone system for 5 years. You put 6 in the whole thing. What do you care about the 800 or 2000 slots? And I think it's the same thing as we look at RMM and PSA. We have to look at what tools balance with what we have in our other tool set, and what part of that, as an example, Data RMM, I don't use any of their networking. It's just not ready for prime time. So when someone says we have that, they don't, I go like, I don't care. I use something else. So you're right. We have to sit there and tone it out to what's going to work for us.
Well, and I just think that, the RMM, the RMM idea is not very new, right? It's very, I would say almost mature and is ripened to be reinvented. I think Ninja's probably, done a lot more along those lines from an RMM standpoint than not. But I mean, hey, Microsoft just came out with auto patching. I mean, at some point, some of the features that were the actual big shiny things that you did to buy in the beginning may be elsewhere, right? May already be there in other tools, and then you need something else.
I just don't know if you could say Microsoft and auto patching in one call, let alone one sentence, George.
Yeah.
That's not been their strong point, is they're releasing a patching and
yeah, totally see what you're saying. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot more conversation to be had here. I'm sure a lot is going to come out over the next several weeks on this topic, but just wanted to get a conversation flowing outside of the keyboard forums, right, that we all know and love. So appreciate everybody for jumping out there today. I know we're a little bit over the hour. And this session was recorded. You'll find it at mspinitiative.com under sessions, and come back again on Thursday, and we'll probably continue the conversation. Thanks a lot, everyone, and catch you on the flip side.
Thanks again.
Thanks, George.
thanks.